Barrie City Council is analyzing the future sustainability of Kempenfest, Barrie's biggest festival. The council heard and debated three presentations about the event.
Not so necessarily thinking that whether it's local or not is really here nor there. The foundation of this festival, from my understanding, is that it's artisan based, and it's kind of lost that artisan based foundation over the years because things seem to be more commercialized where people are purchasing product to sell opposed to actually creating product to sell.
It's craft, crafts are the number two thing there. That's what they're coming to see. And we have done a really good job in working with the Barrie Art Club and HFAC to make sure that we have a really good selection of vendors coming in.
A strategic consultation by Bannikin provided a comprehensive review of the festival's evolution and recommendations for future sustainability. It outlined 29 strategic actions, focused heavily on environmental waste reduction, governance restructuring, and social inclusivity.
So these are groups of people that funders are looking to see identified in the festival board or senior leadership makeup, the types of artists that are coming. And then the last resource that we developed was a list of potential funding resources available to the festival based on what it offers and what it provides. So for the recommendations in this report, they're divided into three strategic areas. So the first is governance and management. The second is operations and marketing. And then the third is partnerships and collaborations. A total of 29 strategic recommendations were provided on how to support the festival's evolution and sustainability to grow as a community and tourism event. These are divided into ongoing or continuous recommendations, short-term recommendations, so from 2025 to 2026, medium-term recommendations from 2027 to 2030, and then long-term recommendations from 2031 to 2040.
Chair of the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee, Bryn Hamilton, and Deputy Mayor Robert Thompson specifically criticized the lack of line of sight regarding the festival's financial health and return on investment.
We're going to make Kempenfest financially sustainable going forward. And I think that's what a lot of us were looking to tonight. Objective number one was to develop a baseline business model of Kempenfest. And, the report, while I don't disagree with the recommendations, for me, it missed the mark a little bit, truthfully. There's 25 recommendations in there. It's too many. For me, if we don't have a good line of sight on the financial side of things and how we're going to create a revenue-generating, financially sustainable, viable Kempenfest going forward, like the other 23 recommendations to me are a moot point.
The other two presentations focused on an operational update and funding request from the Kempenfest board.
7.8% average response in terms of satisfaction, with a 96.5% respondent saying that they're going to return. So strong numbers, but again, we want to see those on an upward trajectory and not on a decline.
Alongside a technical review by Tourism Barrie on economic impact methodology. For 2025, the City of Barrie provided a total $50,000 in funding to the festival, which included $25,000 in direct support, $15,000 for transit services, and $10,000 for the community side stage. Tourism Barrie highlighted a discrepancy between the reported figures. Kempenfest estimated the event generated $9.5 million in economic activity, while Tourism Barrie calculated a lower impact of $8.4 million based on their data methodologies.
We have seen a trend. We've seen a trend that people are staying in Airbnbs and visiting friends and family. That's due to the economy. So we have seen a decline in hotel occupancy, but we've seen a 20% increase in Airbnb.
Following is the coverage of the meeting.
There are three presentations on the agenda this evening. Before we start, I would like to change the order of business to have agenda item 7.1 concerning the Kempenfest consultations considered at the same time as presentation items 3.1 and 3.2 regarding Kempenfest. Are members of the agreement? Yes, lovely. Okay, we'll move into the first presentation. It's 3.1, the presentation concerning the Kempenfest consultation. I would like to call James, tourism developer of Bannikin, to the podium to deliver the presentation.
Oh, and the presentation? Oh, there we go. So thank you for the opportunity to present to all of you. So in the slides, I did have a land acknowledgement, and just before beginning, wanted to recognize that without the lands, waters, and living things in and around Kempenfelt Bay, Kempenfest wouldn't be what it is today. And so I'd like to acknowledge where Kempenfest takes place today as the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, as well as the traditional territory of the Wendat Nation. We're also on Treaty 16, Lake Simcoe Purchase of 1815, which is really interesting to learn about working on this project because the signing between the Crown and certain Anishinaabe peoples actually took place at Kempenfest Bay. So there's that interesting connection of where Kempenfest and the signing of this treaty took place. So my name is James Arteaga. I am the tourism developer at Bannikin, which is a Canadian-based professional services company specializing in research, strategy, and development, and strategic communications within and beyond the tourism space. And for this project, I'm pleased. I had the pleasure of working with my colleague Camilo Montoya Guevara, as well as Ruth Burns, who's the executive director of Ontario Culture Days. And if you don't know, Ontario Culture Days is a non-for-profit organization that celebrates artists and cultural groups across Ontario's communities through its programming, including an annual province-wide festival called Ontario Culture Days Festival. So for today, I'll talk a bit about the project overview. In the presentation, there are some visualizations of some evaluation tools that we develop as part of this project, and then really talk about the recommendations. So around the project goals and objectives, in December 2024, the City of Barrie engaged us at Bannikin in collaboration with Ontario Culture Days to support the city and Kempenfest with a festival review. And from the onset, we developed a project goal and related objectives, as well as a research, engagement, and communications plan, and critical path to guide our research through the project. To achieve the goal and objectives that we did identify, we use a variety of research and engagement methods, including reviewing over 30 background documents and tech context documents, as well as marketing materials, facilitated one in-person baseline business modeling session, conducting an in-person festival site review with festival organizers, conducting research into 3 comparator festivals, and conducting 18 key informant interviews with current and former Kempenfest Board of Directors, municipal staff, municipal councillors, and the mayor, among others. The actual report, so through the research and engagement, we developed a final report for the Kempenfest Board of Directors to support the festival's evolution and sustainability, to grow Kempenfest as a community and tourism event. However, at the same time, the strategic recommendations given in the report also provide clarity on how the City of Barrie, with support from key partners like Tourism Barrie, can support the festival moving forward. Importantly, the research and final report are based on Kempenfest 2024, which was selected for review because it was the latest year the festival took place at the time of the project. As a result, the strategic recommendations are based on the planning and execution of Kempenfest 2024. However, we do recognize in the report that there have been many initiatives undertaken by Kempenfest before 2024, especially before the pandemic, and after 2024 in preparation of Kempenfest 2025. And this is just important to note because it is something, it shows the continued evolution and adaptation of Kempenfest each year, particularly finding solutions to concerns from previous years and leveraging new opportunities identified to increase sustainability and innovation. So some of the tools that we developed, one of them was a performance metrics, and this was developed to support Kempenfest in thinking about how to start to identify which kinds of metrics to be collecting and identifying to be able to have some kind of measurement to see how they're growing and progressing over time. Another tool that we developed is a template to track promotional campaigns to inform marketing needs and opportunities. And then we also provided a list of priority groups. So these are groups of people that funders are looking to see identified in the festival board or senior leadership makeup, the types of artists that are coming. And then the last resource that we developed was a list of potential funding resources available to the festival based on what it offers and what it provides. So for the recommendations in this report, they're divided into 3 strategic areas. So the first is governance and management. The second is operations and marketing. And then the third is partnerships and collaborations. A total of 29 strategic recommendations were provided on how to support the festival's evolution and sustainability to grow as a community and tourism event. These are divided into ongoing or continuous recommendations, short-term recommendations, so from 2025 to 2026, medium-term recommendations from 2027 to 2030, and then long-term recommendations from 2031 to 2040. Importantly, for ongoing short-term and medium-term recommendations, Kempenfest, Barrie Inc., so the organization that is Kempenfest, has been identified as the key lead actioning organization. However, there is a need for Kempenfest Barrie Inc. To work with the city and to determine how the city can support in some of those lead actions. For the long-term recommendations in the report, Kempenfest Barrie Inc. or the City of Barrie have been specifically identified as lead actioning organizations. So the first area, governance and management, identified 8 strategic recommendations, and these focused on governance and management of Kempenfest. So within short-term strategic actions, we identified 3. So the first was to conduct an organizational strategic plan to reset the organizational structure and review of the organization's governance, roles and responsibilities, priorities, financial management, and partnerships, as well as formally set the organization's values, vision, and mission. The second was to review and strengthen the organization's existing governance policy to formally set and familiarize the board of directors as a governance board instead of a working board. The third is to work with Admiral Live to strengthen their service agreement so that their work with the organization could support the organization's system and viability. For within the medium-term strategic actions, we have 2. So the first one is to clearly position and raise the profile of Kempenfest as a lead organizer and main organization responsible for festival administration, programming, and relationship management, including partnership development. And then the second one is developing a multi-year festival strategy that provides long-term direction and guidance for the festival organizers, including the festival's goals, planning priorities, value propositions, programming and audience engagement innovations, and opportunities for potential partnerships. Within the long-term strategic actions, we have 3. So the first is to create a social and environmental returns fund that all festival partners and participants can contribute to financially to support local initiatives, non-for-profits, and NGOs in the name of Kempenfest. The other one is to develop a minimum local goods procurement requirement for vendors. And then the third is to expand Kempenfest's mission and monitoring efforts to include environmental contributions and benefits as part of the festival's focus. The second area, operations and marketing, identifies 13 strategic recommendations, and these focus on the operations and marketing of Kempenfest. So within the short-term strategic actions, we have 4 recommendations. The first one is to review and reassess festival organizers' role and responsibilities to identify potential gaps and overlaps and identify human resource needs. The second is to strengthen the festival's operations plan. The third is to develop a multi-year festival marketing strategy to provide long-term direction and guidance for marketing and promotion efforts, including increasing visitor numbers, so those people that are traveling 40 kilometers or more. And then the fourth, to continue to develop and strengthen the yearly festival marketing plan to identify the strategic marketing and promotional tactics to implement that year and align the plan with key marketing partners such as Tourism Barrie. Within medium-term strategic actions, we identified 4. So the first one was to baseline the festival's waste and emissions, to plan for data-based transition and explore alternative energy solutions. The second was to establish relationships with environmental protection and revitalization organizations to help inform festival planning and suggest environmental programs. And for example, some organizations the Kempenfest could work with would be Pollinate Barrie, Clean Up Barrie, among others. The third is to identify ways to reduce environmental impact of the festival. And then the fourth is to collaborate with the City of Barrie on vendor familiarization and single-use plastic reduction and removal initiatives, such as information sharing, fee reductions for waste cap, etc. Within the long-term strategic actions, there were 5. And the first one is to set a goal to be a single-use and waste-free festival by 2031 and celebrate initiatives in progress. The second is to facilitate a space or platform, for example, an advisory committee for festival organizers to inform city planning processes and future infrastructure projects and improvements based on their needs and festival event locations. And this was one of the actions that was specifically identified as the City of Barrie being the lead. The third is to encourage environmental protections and enhancements of festivals through grant incentives with dedicated environmental targets. This was another one specifically identified for the City of Barrie. The fourth is to work with festival organizers to develop waste-free policies and set a citywide goal for fully removing single-use plastics and other waste from festivals by 2030, again identified for the city of Barrie. And then the last is to collaborate on a communications campaign to highlight the social and environmental benefits of festivals and events in Barrie, also one identified specifically to be led by the city of Barrie. The third area, partnerships and collaborations, identified 8 strategic recommendations, and these focus on opportunities to strengthen and develop new partnerships and collaborations for Kempenfest. Within ongoing strategic actions, so these are actions that there is no set time, this should just always be done. The first was to strengthen existing and explore new partnerships with local Indigenous leadership, groups, and communities. Second is to continue to explore opportunities to improve transportation options to the festival. For example, the shuttle service, Metrolinx, Ontario by Bike, who works a lot with cycling enthusiasts and people who use bikes. And then the third is to continue to work and explore new opportunities with industry associations, organizations, and groups, including local cultural groups, to be involved in Kempenfest. Within the medium-term strategic actions, there were 4. So the first one was to grow local economic impact by partnering directly with local businesses and representative organizations to develop festival packages. The second is to formalize a relationship with the city of Barrie by developing a memorandum of understanding for clarity on support and expected reporting needs. The fourth was to formalize a relationship with Tourism Barrie by developing also a memorandum of understanding for support with marketing planning and inclusion in marketing efforts. And then the fourth is to formalize relationships with the downtown Barrie business improvement area, also through a memorandum of understanding for clear network access to local businesses and potential supports and packaging and special promotional creation. And then finally, for long-term strategic actions, there was only one, and this was just to collaborate with social representation organizations to provide vendor and volunteer opportunities to underrepresented community members, including Barrie Pride, Barrie Native Friendship Center, Women and Children Shelter of Barrie, among many others. And with that, that is the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James, for the presentation. I will first ask if there's any questions from members of the committee. Councillor Rietma.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the report. It's certainly interesting and it's got a lot of great ideas in it. And I think that that's something that that report certainly should be followed up. And I think for sure, Kempenfest is one of the great festivals in Ontario, let alone in Barrie. So I think we have a really good thing going. My question to you is, do you foresee a day when Kempenfest does not come here for money? Do you think that at some point Kempenfest will be able to be self-supporting without city support?
Through you, Chair, thank you for the question. I mean, I think these are some key recommendations that, if followed, I don't think so. It's hard to say because it really depends. But I think there is a lot of, like you said, Kempenfest is a very unique festival, not just for Barrie, but I think for Southern Ontario. It's very much like through this work, it was very clear the passion that the board has, but also residents and other people in the community have for the festival. So I think there's a lot of support for it. I think there's just a need to provide some time to work through some of the challenges and barriers. One thing though, many festivals, especially large festivals like these, Kempenfest being a large festival for Barrie, there's always a need for support from the city. Not always direct funding, but sometimes through supports. For example, in the report it says, providing support such as like shuttles, things that make sense, or waiving certain permits. Sometimes for these larger festivals, there is that kind of opportunity. But as we recommend here, developing a memorandum of understanding that clearly identifies how the city can support in the best way would be the direction to move forward. I hope that answered your question. Okay.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Just out of curiosity, this was commissioned by a direction of council, correct? Or through the board? It was kind of look for the sustainability and stuff. And to be honest, I was actually surprised there was no economic side of it. Like, if we do A, the return on investment is B, because there is an ask financially. And I think that purpose was the marrying of data through Tourism Barrie and the stuff they were to do, but it was to have a financial sustainability. I understand, like, there's a lot of social things that we've talked about in this report, but there's zero economic return on the investment. Like, and I think the purpose of commissioning the report was to look at the growth, the sustainability, the connection to everything. But to be honest, I don't see a single slide deck of any economic return and how we move forward. To Councillor Rima's point, like, you know, municipalities live on 9 cents on the dollar, and the lineups out the door, like, you know, we don't have the easy button, right? So it's hard for every organization that needs to come. And look, I think your ask in the report, and I think the work the board does, I think it's a vital festival, but I thought, like, maybe I've misunderstood, but I thought the direction was on the economic side. So, and I don't know if that's where this report starts, but like, every recommendation, in my opinion, would be to have a business plan. Recommendation 1 would yield this or would do this for it to move forward. So that's maybe a concern, I guess, with the report, but I appreciate it. And there is lots of data and there's lots of great things we could do to move forward, inclusivity and all that stuff. I understand, but yeah, I thought that the report was to help us look at a sustainable model where the festival grew and not always relying on city coppers. Thank you.
Can I respond? Oh, through you, Chair. So the scope of the work was to provide recommendations on how to become a more sustainable moving forward, finding innovative ways. We looked at, for example, visitation numbers using some of the existing data that existed. It wasn't part of the scope to look at specifically the direct, like focusing just on the economic impact, but really those overarching recommendations of what certain things the Kempenfest needs to do to be able to work towards a more sustainable, self-sustaining future. So there is something that you mentioned. The first recommendation is to develop I have it here. So conduct an organizational strategic plan to reset the organization's structure and review Kempenfest Barrie Inc.'s governance roles, responsibilities, priorities, financial management, and partnerships, as well as formally set the organization's values, vision, and mission. I think there's certain things that need to happen before other things, and this was one of the main things that we learned. There's a lot of, there isn't one set document that identifies the key objectives, the key purpose, like what are those guiding principles, or what are the priorities of the festival? Yeah, I'm not sure if that actually answered your question.
Through you, Chair. Maybe just to follow up, like maybe an example. So there's, I think it's in 2030, midterm, or maybe it was actually long term, about, for example, being zero waste, which is very, you know, inspiring and all that stuff. But like in a report, I would like to see today we generate X in waste. This is our goal. Here are our guidelines. Here are ways we can do it. But like to say by 2040 we're going to be this without a direction, like we could do this next year, but your request from here would be about $300,000. So that's what I'm trying to look for. Like I just a starting point, because that's measurable. You know, every year Kempenfest has gotten better with, you know, we use transit, which is better for the environment. I know like they've gotten away from bottled water and stuff like that. Like when I read this, it sounds like we're not doing anything today, and where we'd like to get to in the future I would love a starting point. So.
Through you, Chair. I'll just say that again, it's an overall review, so it is just those strategic recommendations. It doesn't mean that there isn't more work to be done. So some of these recommendations do allude to potentially exploring more deeply on like the waste reduction. So we say in one of the, just as an example, one of the recommendations is basically baselining how much waste currently is produced from the festival to then be able to create a plan and be able to measure how much it's reducing year over year. These things take years. They don't happen from one day to another. So just to say that, it's like overview recommendations, but there is more work to be done for sure.
Any other questions for members of the committee? Back to Councillor Rima.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do agree with your very early recommendation to have a good hard look at resetting the board. And I'm just wondering, it seems to me, if I recall the structure more or less, it's largely made up of the community service groups, right? And I'm just wondering how you foresee that changing in terms of how that all works together. Any comments on that?
Through you, Chair, I would just say I think it's definitely a conversation to be had with the existing board and other stakeholders. I'm not sure if I'm the right person at the moment to say how that could grow, but all right, like for your question is how it could evolve moving forward. Yeah, I feel like there's a need for some more community or stakeholder engagement with the board and other people involved with the festival, but definitely something that we heard in the research was exploring ways that other community groups that may not have existed when the board was created to find opportunities to include them in different ways. Maybe it's not through the board of directors, but through other means where they have input in how the festival evolves over time. But I would say that's something, to further explore as well.
Any other questions for members of the committee? Or any other questions for members of council? Councillor Harris?
Great. Thank you, Chair Hamilton, and thank you for the presentation. I was curious, and I really appreciated the questions from Deputy Mayor Thompson, because I was wondering too, you mentioned a lot about environmental sustainability, and what I thought was missing was financial sustainability. So I wonder if you could comment on some of the content you read and reviewed as far as the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities related to the financial part of the Kempenfest. And, Deputy Mayor Thompson mentioned that Kempenfest comes here and, receives investment from the city in the event. So can you speak to me what you saw as the weaknesses of the financial kind of makeup of the Kempenfest?
Through you, Chair. So what we saw, and it's in the report, how Kempenfest has been, there's certain, how to say this, certain financial challenges that currently exist, but we saw that they have been reducing some of the debt that they have, and they've been, again, it's a long process, but they have been working towards reducing some of their debt. Is that what you mean? Well,
yeah. Maybe what's the to the other side of that? What's the top elements of opportunity to reduce the debt to actually increase the revenue?
Through you, Chair. So what we saw through reviewing the festival, there's different ways that they've generated revenue. One of the clear things was that there was a need for better clarity on some of the financials and how much actually is generated from Kempenfest. So it's one of the recommendations actually to, I'm just trying to find it here. Just having like a centralized way to really collect all that financial data. currently how Kempenfest is structured, it's very, there is Kempenfest, but then there are all the different social organizations. And so it's not fully clear. And so that's really the big observation for us. There's an opportunity there to just work on improving clarity around their financials.
Great, thank you. And if I can, Chair Hamilton, also was curious, and you mentioned, again, short-term goal, looking at resetting strategic plan, values, vision, mission. And I found it curious. It was interesting. 8 of the 13 operating marketing goals relate to environmental type initiatives. So a couple questions, curious. Is that something that you've heard that was part of their vision mission to move towards more an environmental focus for Kempenfest? And the second part would be, as relate to the financial sustainability being one of the key interests. And it's a great festival. I'm a Barrie person, so I go every year. Love it. So is the effort in 8 of the 13 marketing operations recommendations being focused on single-use plastic environmental concerns, are those seen to be items that would improve the financial bottom line? So just, if you could comment.
Sorry, I'm not using this microphone. Through you, Chair. So one exercise that we did as part of the research was to use a flourishing business canvas, which is a business modeling canvas that goes beyond the traditional business model and really starts to make someone think about what is the environmental impact, social impact of your business, and thinking long term. Through that exercise, it became clear there weren't a lot of considerations around the impact of the festival on the environment, while also recognizing that a key asset of the festival is being on the bay. So there was a bit of a disconnect of recognizing that that's a key consideration. That's the place that it takes place, and it didn't seem that that would change in the near future. And so thinking of ways to ensure that it's environmentally sustainable, that's where those kinds of recommendations came to be. We didn't, potentially investing in those reducing environmental impacts or reducing the waste could reduce certain costs. One of the things that we also identified is that the area where Kempenfest takes place doesn't have the infrastructure for that kind of festival currently. So there's certain things that they're having to bring to the location because there isn't already, say, a spot to connect for hydro. So they need motorized engines or access to water. So there needs to be, so those kinds of things currently do have a significant environmental impact as a result of the festival. And so, and it's one of the reasons why we recommended having some kind of communication between not just Kempenfest, but other festivals and the city when thinking about infrastructure development or other kinds of development that may impact where a festival takes place. And in this case, the largest festival in Barrie. So thinking about those connections. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the answers. Thank you.
Councillor Kungle next.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton, and thank you for the presentation, James. A couple of comments, just from an observation on some pieces that made me take some notes and then maybe some questions. So seeing that you're identifying different Canadian heritage priority groups, and then you've noted some other ones, and I'm assuming we'll take this all however it moves forward as a including but not limited to, like things like Métis and others that are well established but not necessarily inclusive under some of the references. And that leads me into just different pieces around, I think it's great. You've already done a lot of work. I know you're getting questions around finances. It'll be nice to see that come forward too, but this is, for me, there's a lot of work that's behind this. So I like where you're starting to move the thinking and the considerations, and hoping that baseline will come back when you start looking at a strat plan, then like what exactly are your baselines and what are we measuring against? Some pieces that will be interesting, I'm assuming, when we see kind of the next iteration of this or as this gets more informed, is the waste piece. So There's a lot of interesting pieces. So while you've kind of put City of Barrie, I won't put staff on the hot spot to say, is that fair or not fair to tag you to these things? Because I don't think it's an all or nothing. So, while we can look at permits and then getting certain vendors that carry certain types of products, it's also knowing then where's your garbage going? Is it a local landfill or an external landfill? And regardless of that, matching your products with your destination. But outside of that, we've seen over and over again, and Mariposa Folk Festival is a really beautiful example of where they've come, and I'm assuming they're a stakeholder, having volunteers actually at waste bins to facilitate the direction. Because even though you've got products that might be recyclable, if they're contaminated, they're still waste. So there's much more to this than just simply product and whose responsibility and how do we collect it. I think it's also around then metrics and considerations around who are we currently dependent on? Like, there's so much goodwill and beautiful relationships that happen across the city between Rotaries and even like your board, who is a working board. Like, there's a lot. So it's looking also at, from a sustainability, not just financially, but who's your goodwill and what is their in-kind contributions? And so while we still see, some hard financial asks, there's still heavy in-kind, I think, city partnership around this too. And so I think the broader scope is also, what does it really take to make this work? And then, as you go through those considerations, I would say, I don't want to lead you down a rabbit hole, but, we're seeing 50-50s take off. I'm not sure what the implications are with different types of ways in which you're drawing people into building, awareness or donations back to community, or if you're bringing in not-for-profits, if you can pull in anything tied to the trail system, right? So Simcoe County Trail Loop is significant. We've got cyclists. Is there any part, while it's already a really busy weekend, that you can lead into bringing people in, or some type of movement that connects it to some other aspect of the city or the waterfront, that might just help bring in a different group of people and more monetary, but would love to see where the debt is coming from. So when we talk about financials, is your strategy targeting areas that you can actually impact change depending on where you're actually seeing, is it just not enough revenue across the board? And we're having different conversations about transit and cost and, fees for certain things. Or is it about just, because you get so many people coming in, then it's around, is it how we think about how they spend? So where's the debt? Is it on the entertainment side? Is it on the festival side? Is it on so what component there can we be better partners around helping to have a conversation about what's the area or dynamic about Kempenfest that is really a pressure point financially? I'm not sure if you have that or if you're able to look at that. So these are comments to take away. You don't have, but that's where, that's my line of sight around as you move forward, what to come back with.
Through you, Chair. So when you were mentioning the trails and Simcoe County's existing trails, so as well as the waste management. So one thing we recognize through this process is that there are already a lot of organizations that exist in Barrie that are doing some really great things. And it's really encouraging Kempenfest to foster those relationships and partnerships to be able to work together to address some of these challenges. So for example, waste and cycling, one of the ones we mentioned was Ontario by Bike, that also works with a lot of cycling tourism. In the province, they also host a national cycling tourism conference to really encourage alternative modes of transportation to get to the place, because something that came out clearly was parking was a big issue. So thinking about how to encourage more people to come. Yeah.
And then I guess I will say through you, Chair Hamilton, final questions, maybe to come back with a later date if not considered, is your populations that you're drawing in. So tied to transportation is, and I might not be fair on giving the full scope, it's usually how people are coming in their own, multimodal, and then transit, but also does our planning, and I know it's constricted downtown, allow for different shuttles of different sizes to come in. So you've got retirement homes that like to travel, will travel to events, but do we actually support other third-party shuttles to come in and do a drop-off and a pickup? And so do we have accessibility for different groups to be coming in if they have their own transportation that may not be by car or by public transit? And then lastly, I think that is just around accessibility from how are you attracting different groups and other creative things. So who's not coming and why aren't they coming? And what I'm seeing is different lenses around stimulation or overstimulation or just different unique pieces. So seeing silent discos happening where you're giving an opportunity to kind of be in a space that isn't overly stimulated or loud, but is just a different or unique approach. That's an experience people haven't had before, but might fit in. And people seem to be traveling for this or choosing those types of interesting, like day dances. So things like that may be not highly costly to do, but might invite them into different parts of the city or different things where families might want to try them on versus a day in a place in the sun. And so are we moving people enough in place? And are we providing enough access for them to want to stay in place?
Mm-hmm. Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, agree with all those ideas. I think but the key thing is having that like strategic document. So really like focusing on identifying what is the purpose of Kempenfest, what are our objectives, and to achieve these, what sorts of things should we be offering? What sorts of things do we need to think about around logistics? How are we thinking about people moving through? How are we reaching different community members? If one of the key things is to bring community, to be a homecoming thing, or if it's focused on arts and culture. That document is the first recommendation. That's why it's the first one, because it's really thinking of those foundational pieces to then be able to think about all these other things that would come after. Yeah.
Overall, a great start. I mean, a lot of good thinking behind this. And so it's nice to see that that is a focus of attention, because I think it is, it's key priority around an amazing event that we want to see become sustainable and grow and in exposure and an impact. Yeah.
Okay, I think we had Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll make this really quick because I'm looking at the time. One piece that and again, I'm a very big supporter of the festival, been there many a times. However, I'll be the first one to admit, haven't been there in probably a decade or more. And the reason for that is I started noticing it getting away from the artisan side of things and more commercialized type products out there. And it was the same vendors year after year. And I don't see that being identified in this report anywhere. Was that anything that was looked at or identified by your group through this process to try and attract people to continually come back and also hopefully expand the attendance from year to year?
I believe so, through you, Chair. In the, not in the recommendations per se, but we do say like there is a need to work with Tourism Barrie to really, and the BIA to really, your question was around the more commercialization of some of the offerings there. It's referenced, but again, because this was a review, so it was a bit higher level, looking to see what are some of those larger challenges that are being faced by Kempenfest. One thing that we did say was having that, I think actually one of the recommendations here was about having a certain percentage of local, not purveyor, but like local material. I'll try to.
Yeah, on slide 16, it references develop a minimum local goods procurement requirement for vendors. I'm not so necessarily thinking that whether it's local or not is really here nor there. The foundation of this festival, from my understanding, is that it's artisan-based, and it's kind of lost that artisan-based foundation over the years because things seem to be more commercialized where people are purchasing product to sell opposed to actually creating product to sell.
So
is where I'm going with this.
Sorry. Through you, Chair. Yes, that is the original reason that Kempenfest came to exist, is the arts and crafts. But in speaking to the variety of different stakeholders, reading a lot of the background documents, it was clear that it's evolved to something more. Not to say that that's not still a key part of Kempenfest, but it very much, it's from speaking to the different stakeholders, it really came to show that Kempenfest has become almost a homecoming, a celebration of Barrie, beyond just arts and culture and arts and crafts. So it is mentioned the commercialization and thinking about that. It's more something for Kempenfest to explore internally and with its stakeholders to determine what's the best move based on their strategic direction.
Okay, any other further questions? I do want to move us along because we still have another presentation on Kempenfest. So seeing none, I think great comments, great questions. I don't want to reiterate, but I feel largely aligned with what we've heard here tonight. I remember the previous presentation here and us saying, how are we going to make Kempenfest financially sustainable going forward? And I think that's what a lot of us were looking to tonight. Objective number one was to develop a baseline business model of Kempenfest. And, you know, the report, while I don't disagree with the recommendations, for me, it missed the mark a little bit, truthfully. There's 25 recommendations in there. It's too many. For me, if we don't have a good line of sight on the financial side of things and how we're going to create a revenue generating, financially sustainable, viable Kempenfest going forward, like the other 23 recommendations to me are a moot point. And even what you said tonight, there's not a good line of sight on the financial aspects is making me a little bit uneasy, truthfully. I will get back to Councillor Rietma's point. Like perhaps we really do need to look at the governance structure and how to create a skills-based board going forward so we can really track money coming in and revenue that we're producing. Because I mean, I'm looking at all this, I see the economic impact, that makes sense to me, but the rest of the financials, I really just, I have no line of sight on that. So to come back here year after year and asking for money, I think that's the whole point that we're trying to avoid. But we need a better line of sight on how money is being utilized right now. So that's my feedback, and I think that's what we're largely hearing. So with that, thank you very much, James. Appreciate your time this evening, and I'm going to move us into the second presentation. This is a presentation by the Kempenfest Board of Directors concerning Kempenfest 2025, and I will call Paul Markle to the podium to deliver the presentation. Hi, Paul.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about Kempenfest, and it's near and dear to my heart. I spend a lot of my time, working on this event and listening to the presentation. I understand your concerns, and hopefully I can address some of those things with my report this evening. I did have a presentation loaded up. I'm not seeing it.
I apologize. We're having some technical difficulties with IT. It's not working. We all have the presentation pulled up in front of us. I think he's still working on it.
The presentation that we put together here is sort of an audience data report, and it does have a couple recommendations. I'm going to blow through this as quickly as I can. There's 19 slides on here. It's relatively self-explanatory, but it does address some of the questions that were brought up in the previous report and from council members. For the most part, our marketing reach for Kempenfest is something that we've been focusing on in trying to increase our radius beyond 40 kilometers and to increase our tourism rate, because we believe that Kempenfest has the opportunity to drive tourism dollars into the community, and our focus really is on those incremental dollars that are coming to the city, not on what's already spent here. We know that about 70% of the people that come to this event are actually from our area. So the other, in this case last year, about 25%. Those are the ones that we're really trying to make sure that are staying on the ground and spending their dollars in this community. Largely, we use local media from Rock 95, Cool 107.5, Pure Country to support this. Part of that is because they provide financial support through marketing, but they also have that local reach. And then we have been doing some additional work with regards to transit, putting advertising on Go and some of those places with the help of Tourism Barrie. So we do have a working relationship with Tourism Barrie. Is it as strong as it needs to be? Absolutely not. And that's something that we're working towards. And we did take the report from Bannikin very seriously. However, the timing of that report and their scope was such that we didn't really have a lot of chance to implement everything that was sort of in there, but it is in our long-term planning. But taking some of the things that we learned along the way, and things that we weren't really considering, some of those are because of the nature of the way the Kempenfest board is put together. When you start talking about environmental concerns, not really on our map, and we're just trying to stay afloat. And if you've paid any attention provincially to what's happening with festivals and events, we just found out today that the Riverfest in Elora is basically been canceled. We're under tremendous pressure. The economic impact of rising cost is really what sort of drives a lot of the motivation behind how we sponsor this event and where we go. Councillor Harvey talked about moving away from an arts-based festival to more other things and having some commercialized things. Some of that is because we need to generate revenue, but it's also because our audience is telling us that that's what they want to see when they come to Kempenfest. So in terms of annual attendance growth, last year we saw a bit of a decline in overall attendance, but we did see an increase of about 7.5%. I don't have my glasses on, I apologize. We're about 6,500 people in unique visitors. So we know that it is attracting more and more visitors to our town. And again, one of the slides in here talks about tourism versus local attendance. Those numbers are slightly down, but I think there's a lot of factors that sort of play into that are more around the way that people are spending dollars and just the current economic environment. They're spending less, they're traveling less. We were hoping to take more advantage of people staying in town or in Ontario this year, and we did see some of that. With regards to overnight stays, it's interesting. Kempenfest really is a local festival, and people that come to our festival don't necessarily stay overnight. And when they do stay overnight, they're staying with family and friends for the most part. But we are seeing an increase, obviously, in Airbnb and some of those stays, and those do contribute to the MAT tax. And we are monitoring that and looking at different ways of working with Tourism Barrie and our hotel operators. The addition of new hotels in town, I think, will help, obviously to make that easier for people to stay. We also have a tremendous number of vendors that are here that are using a lot of those places to stay while they're here for the festival. With respect to returning and new attendees, we saw a 14% increase in new attendees coming to the event. And we noticed that there's about an 85 or 86% retention rate with prior visitors. So we think those numbers are strong, but they certainly have the potential to grow. And that's really where our focus is on making sure that the event, which can't get bigger, is better every year. We add new attractions and we do things to make sure that people are coming and finding something new and to discover, but also being able to get that homecoming type feel where they come back and there's some familiarity with it. Again, we try to do what we can to ask for repeat vendors. Strategies along ticketing, for instance, with our concert series. Multiple day passes are what we're looking for in the future. Those are also strategies for increasing revenue, which primarily is our biggest issue. Last year, and I don't have all the financials yet, and I apologize for that, but again, it's just timing. We had a 1% differential in our expense budget. So what we projected for expenses, we missed by about 1%. Where we had some problems is with our top line sales. We had a number of our major sponsors back out as a result of tariffs. And then we had short timelines to be able to recover all of that revenue. But revenue really is what is the issue with Kempenfest. And hopefully we can get into a few seconds of what the governance structure is and what we're working on as a board to make changes to that in conjunction with the report that we've gotten from Bannikin. Talking about daily attendance, this is another opportunity for this event. Friday night is a night when the event really isn't operating. We do a concert on Friday night, but really the festival hasn't started yet. We do have the Midway that's operating. We have Oasis, which is a beer garden that's run by the Knights of Columbus, and they do kind of a soft launch for family and friends. But when you see 26% of our attendance being on Friday, and we're not even open, to us, it says that there's an opportunity there to expand our operating hours or look at how we can attract people for a longer period of time, which again is going to generate economic impact for the city. But there are some logistical issues with that we need to consider because we still have people loading in, and we want to make sure that everyone's safe while we're doing that. Patron group sizes, not much to see there. Most people come in ones or twos. Our ticket packages for the concerts are up to 6, so we're trying to attract those groups to come as a mass. The age of our attendees is also something that we focus in on. We know that if we track the under 18 and really focus on 18 to or under 18 to 34, what we're doing is we're creating sustainable attendees for the future. This is an event where we want families to come back year over year. My kids come, I'm sure that many of the councillors here have family that return every year, and it really is a bit of a homecoming. We still see strength in those older numbers. The demographic between is primarily women that are coming to this event, but the men are pulling up their socks, and it's not that much of a differential, quite frankly. In terms of audience demographics, this is predominantly, a Barrie festival, and you're going to see it reflected in the color of the event. But there is programming now, especially on the community stage, where last year we put in some programming for which included the BIA. So we had some Southeast Asian programming there. For another part of our culture, we had some wrestling in there. We've got a few different things that are attracting different kinds of groups. We do miss the mark, quite frankly, both on the structure and the makeup of the board, but also with our LGBT community, with our Indigenous communities. We need to do more work there. But it's better done organically. So what we're doing is creating space for those things to happen, and then hopefully we will see more and more of those populations coming out. But at 5% of Southeast Asian attendance last year, that represents and that's 5% of the 25,000 unique visitors. It's not a bad number for the first time doing something along those lines. So we're quite happy to see that. Transportation and parking become a huge issue for this event, and this is where we seek support from the city. And one of the last pages in here, we've got 4 recommendations or requests. But you can see that the daily ridership year over year is increasing, so the shuttles are important, and people are more and more aware of them. But I think that there's some really great opportunity for collaboration with the city in using existing transit and the new transit hub. Where any point along those transit lines is a pickup point. We have to figure out how do we get them on the bus and identify that they're coming to Kempenfest. But I know that there's likely opportunities to use supplements from the provinces for his transportation to maybe finance some of that ridership. And then we run different kind of busing basically just around the shuttle route at Kempenfest so that we can get people from one side of it to the other very easily. It also satisfies mobility issues that we have in some cases so that we can attract more people that may not necessarily be able to walk the entire event. But I think there's an opportunity to work with the city very closely. Last year was also the first year that there was enforced parking on the Centennial Beach side. A lot of the information that we got back in terms of satisfaction for the event, which comes up a little later, were related to people being unhappy with the parking situation, and that's understandable. For 50 years, we haven't charged, no one's been charged for parking, and all of a sudden we are. We have no issue with parking enforcement. It in fact helps us. It makes the event safer. But it needs to be done in a thoughtful way where we're not giving them 3 days notice. We're giving them more notice, so we have an opportunity to market that way. But it also gives us, the chance to make that a plus. We can change that messaging out there to say we're trying to be more environmentally focused. We're trying to use existing systems in the city to make sure that those already spent tax dollars are just used more wisely. With respect to how patrons hear the event, still it's word of mouth. It is a solely local event, so we're seeing that in obviously the way people find out about it, but we are seeing more reach on radio, and we had really good response this year on social media, so that will be an area that we continue to invest in. In terms of audience sentiment, we did have a bit of a decrease last year over the years past, but we think that might have had something to do with the parking and a few other things. But 7.8% average response in terms of satisfaction, with a 96.5% respondent saying that they're going to return. So strong numbers, but again, we want to see those on an upward trajectory and not on a decline. When we are asking our clients what they like the most about the event, they like the music. Primarily, which is great because really the only source of revenue for Kempenfest is derived from music. Sponsors don't sponsor spear catchers and mugs and those kinds of items, but they do sponsor having artists come in and they get behind that. Sad because there really should be some funding on that craft side, but it really is. The truth is that the dollars come in from that source. But in terms of what people like, Councillor Harvey, it's crafts are the number 2 thing there. That's what they're coming to see. And we have done a really good job in working with the Barrie Art Club and HFAC to make sure that we have a really good selection of vendors coming in. We've gotten away from having more commercialized things. We have an area called the Marketplace, which addresses some of those more commercial products, but there is a significant number of unique vendors there. And I'm telling you, these vendors, they sign up, they come back year after year. Some of these guys are they're selling out on Friday night before the event even opens up. So that really is a major draw. And if you haven't been in 10 years, Councillor Harvey, we want to see you back, because I think you'll see that there's been some changes there. In terms of location, people love it. There's not much we can change about that. Food is another focus. We think that that is an opportunity. If you can attract them with their stomach, then you're obviously in a winning scenario. But we are hearing, obviously, that there's some planning happening with the city on with the culture and possibly some planning on additional food offerings, which would be year-round down there, which we encourage, and again, I think would be a great addition to the waterfront. In terms of tourist spend, there are some different ways of attracting this. We focus on the tourism spend that's here, and last year we surveyed 500 attendees, and we've done that for the last 4 or 5 years. So we have a fairly significant database of actual survey responses, and we ask direct questions about what their spends are. So the numbers in there are supported, and what it does is it generates a tourism-induced economic impact. Kathleen, a trainer from Tourism Barrie, I believe, is going to present later on this evening, but we're not that far off in terms of the overall number and what this event it generates. What's not included in here is the economic impact of what the groups that make up Kempenfest generate and put back into the community. So that's something that I think we can report on more wholesome or more fully moving forward. I did supply another TRIUM report, which supports the dollars and the numbers that are in this report. So that brings me to our request for Kempenfest 2026. And I'm hoping there's time where I can address maybe some of your questions about governance, financial structure and planning. Those are things that we're working on actively. But primarily what we're looking for in 2026 is the same level of funding and support from the city that we've enjoyed in the past, specifically in 2025. We want the city to work with Kempenfest organizers to develop a transit plan that utilizes existing bus routes and the new transit station, in addition to the Lakeside Shuttle Loop funding provided to Kempenfest in 2024 and 2025. We'd also like the city, if possible, to provide $10,000 in funding to support the community stage infrastructure. That would be the actual cost of putting the stage up and those things. We don't generate revenue through any kind of ticketing at that particular location. It's borne by the sponsorship dollars that we bring in for the event. But we do understand that there is a culture and event grant program that's being explored right now. So if that funding doesn't come to fruition in time for next year, we'd like you to consider helping us with that other event. If you can't, that's fine. We'll find a way, but it is something that would really help us to offset some of our costs. And then again, we'd like the city to work with Kempenfest organizers to develop a coordinated parking enforcement communication plan. So we know that that's where the mayor wants to go. We want to go with them. We just want to do it in a coordinated way. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Great. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Markle. Any questions from members of committee? Councillor Rietma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Markle, for all the work that you do on this one, and for the whole board. I know that there's an awful lot of effort goes into it, and I appreciate very much as well. My suspicion is that Kempenfest over the years has grown and grown and grown, and the infrastructure and the board capacity hasn't grown with it. And I think it's really time to have a good hard look at that. One of my questions is, have you considered somehow incorporating the stage at Meridian Square into Kempenfest? And the thought behind that, of course, is to draw more people casually into the downtown. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we have had that conversation with the BIA, and quite frankly, there's the other component of that, which is what the real function of Kempenfest is, and you have to understand the structure of Kempenfest. to understand that that probably wouldn't work, in moving the stage completely. It also starts to draw the event out through the marina and a bunch of other areas that would really dilute everything that we're trying to accomplish there. Suffice it to say that if I was to develop this event again right now, not in the 70s when it was born, we wouldn't have the same business structure that we have right now. It would be completely different. But the nature of that governance structure and organizational structure kind of creates problems for us. We're working through them. We're working with a consultant to fix that governance model, but there are a lot of considerations as to where the income comes and where it goes. Essentially, Kempenfest is a not-for-profit, like a business, right? That all of the income that comes into it goes out through its partners and nothing's retained, and that creates issues for us. So having a more fulsome governance model where all of the income comes into one place, runs the event, and then is distributed back to those organizations so that they can put it back out into the community is really where we want to get to. But there are some challenges with that, especially in working with a different group. So we're keenly aware of that. As it relates to the Meridian Square stage, I would love to have that as a component of the event. We just need to figure out how that we would work with the BIA and Tourism Barrie, obviously, to make that happen.
Okay, I appreciate those answers. I think they're right on, actually. I just had a question about the numbers that you gave us. One of them was that direct municipal tax was $87,000, and that sort of indirect tax, or the total tax that was generated by the municipality, was $198,000. Am I reading those numbers right, or am I?
Yeah, I don't think we were talking about tax at all. That might be a typo.
All right. They're in that.
Can you give me the slide number?
You gave us a memo, the economic impact of Kempenfest in Simcoe. And it was a 3-4 page memo, and it's on.
That's the TRIUM report?
That's the next presentation, Councillor Rima.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Oh, okay. Then I won't ask you the question.
I can give you an answer if you want, but I don't think it's going to be the right one.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Councillor Negussi.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. That was great presentation, sir. Quick question on slide 15. What did you list about the event? And others is indicate 48.63%. I'm very much interested to know what are included in others. Is it safety?
So the raw data on this is extensive. I mean, it could be anything from I like the hot dog I got. I mean, there's a million things in there that make up that 48%, and we can provide that raw data if you like, but it's very wide ranging. So we sort of include it in the lump sum, and I realize that's there's a pretty big number there to be able to try to explain, but I only have 10 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe even just themes at some point would be interesting to us to hear if there's any sort of consistent themes that were coming out of that 48% of feedback. Any other questions from members of committee or members of council? Oh, Councillor Corser, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I might be a little bit in the weeds, but I wanted to just ask a couple of questions about the billboard advertising that you're doing through Pattison. Is it charged? I remember that we had I don't even know if I should be asking you that. I know that we had an agreement when we put that billboard up that we would, for local advertising, it was to be complimentary because of the issues with putting that up. I guess I would ask through you, Chair, to maybe Mr. Prowse? Or was that Rebecca? Sorry, Mrs. James Reed.
Thank you, through you, Chair Hamilton. I can speak to that. This is an issue that we've been working with the Ministry of Transportation on to secure the signage advertising space on the en route, and we are very close to having that finalized. However, the details of that is still kind of waiting to be in writing, but the principle of it is that it's for City of Barrie events and City of Barrie communications and information. So I think this one might be a bit of a stretch because it's not a city event, whereas something like the Air Show or Canada Day would fall within those parameters. So once I finalize the details of that, I will do a memo to council.
All right, thank you for that. And another question was for hotel capacity. Is the reason that I see a lot of people staying with family and friends, is there hotel capacity after we have vendors coming to the city and a lot of rooms are being taken up by that? I'm just wondering if we actually have ability to put them up in visitors up in hotels.
Do you want my Chamber of Commerce response?
Sure.
You know, we need capacity. You know, the city's growing; it's going to continue to grow. We need capacity. That's coming. We've got 2-3 hotels on their way, and hoteliers coming. Kathleen Trainer and Tourism Barrie can answer that question a lot better than I can. My understanding is that we are at capacity through that weekend, but it's the summer, and I think we're at capacity pretty much every weekend. I think the reason why people stay with family and friends is because it's a homecoming, right? And again, when you're looking at a lot of austerity, right now, and people saving dollars, they're just trying to come, and they're trying to make the best of the event. It's not a cheap event, I mean, when you really get down to it, we've got vendors that are selling barbecues and expensive things. There's concert and beer prices. Like it generates a lot of income from that perspective. So wherever they can save $1, I think they're trying to.
Okay, yeah, because I was just wondering if maybe fully appreciating the hometown sense of it, and a lot of the people that come to it are from local areas. It might be a bit of a deterrent if you can't get accommodations as well. So
very true.
And I guess is there any outreach for the shuttle? We're trying to figure out the transportation wise. Is there any with the marketing and advertising that that Kempenfest is currently doing? Are there any information on a guide for public transit or anything like that that is being promoted through?
We do promote once we know we have the funding for it, we obviously promote the route. I can tell you for the Santa Claus Parade this year, we weren't able to use the lot in Beefield Mall, and that created a problem for us. So the city came to us with an offer to just create a bus route, and that kind of tweaked an idea to maybe we could do something similar to for Kempenfest, but those plots may not be available. But if you can find a parking along a route, then that makes things a little bit easier as long as they're parking within whatever the parking guidelines are. But it's a good use in this getting your ridership up if we are bringing local residents in. So if the focus is on if you're from town and you're coming in, don't bring your car. Use the transit. But we have to figure out a mechanism for that. But I think the new transit hub and all this investment down there, we need to utilize it, and it's a great way to showcase what's happening down the waterfront.
Yeah, that's why I was asking about the promotion of it, because now that that's open.
We always promote it. It's part of our wayfinding. It's a part of our guide that goes out. It's out there digitally as well. But again, if we don't have shuttles, then we're not going to build that in.
Yeah. Okay. I think that other questions asked around the table actually kind of covered everything else I had, but thank you for the information.
Okay, Councillor Kungl.
Thank you through you, Chair Hamilton. To Paul, thank you for the overview. I'll frame it as a question. I don't expect that this is going to be possible in this upcoming event, but maybe in out years. When you talk about Friday and activation of Friday being a potential, have you thought about sponsorships with drones? And how do you light up the sky if you're busy in a different piece? And how do you still draw people in? And whether or not that's still an avenue, if you're seeing people interested in kind of sponsoring drone shows that don't create the fireworks, but do create really interesting marketing.
That I will take any ideas that come. The bigger, the hairier, the better.
I got lots of big hairy ideas for you.
We're looking at things next year, and again, in taking what Bannikin was able to present to us, and utilizing the yacht club and utilizing the the sailing program that you have and everything that's there. We also talked with city staff about the potential of using some of the local planes that are in the air show to promote the air show, which is there's opportunities that we can do a bunch of different things. Yeah, a drone show would be awesome on a Friday night. We just again have to take a look at the fact that we have 250 arts and crafts vendors plus all of our suppliers coming in setting up. So those walkways where people are going to be, they're taking them with vehicles and people are still continuing to set up, and we have to think that through a little bit. But soft launching in a couple of activations makes a lot of sense, and we've seen some success with it. So again, when our problem is revenue and it's an unfunded, unticketed event, we're looking at all options. So if we can expand our operations on the Friday night with revenue ideas that generate revenue for Kempenfest Barrie Inc. To retain, then I think that's the way to go. At some point, I'd love to tell you about some of the changes we made structurally with our financial plan in relation again to this and the plans we have as far as a strategic plan and some more cohesive forward thinking. Some of it related to the Bannikin, but a lot of it related to what we need to do. And I think I have one more year as chair, and my focus by the end of that period is to have a strategic plan and a multi-year financial plan that will ensure that we're not coming to the city. That's not what we want to do. What we want to make sure is that this event does not end, that it continues to drive revenues back into the city like it always has.
Continue. I'll frame it as a question if it helps, but really from a bigger picture, my last kind of comment / question is there opportunity to have a conversation? I know you talk a bit about not really wanting to draw the event from downtown, but then I would say noticing that you're probably looking at a high proportion of the local, the homecoming, you're staying with friends and family. I go every year. I don't want to park downtown. I do because I purchase antiques. And if I can't get a dresser out of the downtown, I don't know how I'm going to get a vehicle in there. So it's those things around why are people parking downtown? And for our big items like that, how do we create an ease of access so it's not problematic depending on what you choose to do or what you choose to buy and how you can get in and out when vendors are so tightly connected. So just thinking about how do you move things, maybe not people, and will that alleviate it? Because I would say I would love a concept that has the lawn chair luminata in Ward 3 at the East Bayfield Community Center, and you have drop-in, and I know we got camps going, but if families are going, usually I'm with teenagers who are squirrely, and adults definitely want to do something different than teenagers, and so, or really young ones. So how do we create spaces to say, park up in the north end of Barrie, get a shuttle for those that want to go, but you've got access to outdoors, let the kids run, drop-in programming, bathrooms, ease of access, maybe some food courts, but you allow that space to allow families to kind of decentralize a little bit.
Absolutely, and I think there are so many opportunities to collaborate with different groups, and BIA included. It's a capacity issue for us at the moment, and again, you have to understand this board is made up of lawyers and chamber representatives, and none of us are specialists in running events of this size, and which is why we need to move away from the working board we have and have a governance approach to be able to expand those capacities out and find new ways of utilizing those areas. I'm 100% for that. I think that's definitely where we need to go. It's just not within our purview at the moment. But
fair enough.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, I am just being cognizant of time, so if you can keep your comment, question, brief, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. I will not give any advice on how to run the festival, that's for sure. But I do want to thank you for your efforts and for your contribution to the board of directors and Kempenfest, Mr. Markle. It's appreciated. As a Barrie person who goes there every year, I appreciate that. I guess you said it in your last comment. I was thinking it's not a people problem. It's not a number of people problem. It's a revenue problem. So you could add 10,000 more people and add no more revenue next year, or very little revenue, or be cost you more. So I think that's the question. Bigger may not actually be better necessarily, but how do we create the revenue? So I was wondering with that, I noticed on the goals and objectives for the presentation report, 2 of the 4 objectives related to business model for Kempenfest, to develop a future business model of Kempenfest. So I wonder if you could speak to the report and the comments or content related to the business model and how that might be of assistance, because we have a revenue issue, not a people issue. And I also had just a comment. I wondered if you track attendance with weather as a causation of the numbers, because it would seem it's obviously a weather dependent festival. So just wanted to make that comment. That will impact your numbers. So thank you.
Yeah, the weather thing is anytime you have an outdoor event, weather is a component. 2016, 2017, we obviously had a major weather event which impacted us, created really our situation for a long-term liability, which has been cleared up, by the way. Our financials are in much better shape. We use Environics data that's supplied by the good work that Tourism Barrie does, and we pay for that section so we know who's coming. It's only 2 years that we've had that more accurate data. So, and in those 2 years, we haven't had bad weather. We've had beautiful weather. So, I don't have a solid answer with data, but certainly the Environics data that we do get would take that into consideration. If there was weather, we could correlate it to attendance. And yes, if 10,000 more people came, there would be expenses that came with that. You need more washrooms, you need more, those kinds of things, and it would generate more revenue for the city, and it would generate more revenue for the different groups. But your infrastructure costs stay the same, and and grow a little bit. Where we need to focus on is generating sustainable revenue for the event, and that'll be solved by changing the governance, and we know that. So it is something that we're working towards, and as I said, having a plan to get that done is my goal. Whether we get that executed in that time frame, probably not.
Great, thank you. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Markle. I think exactly what you just said. The issue is a revenue generating one, and it links back to governance. So I think that's good that you've got clarity in that. I am going to bring us to the next item just because of time here, but just one final thing for you. You said there was a 1% differential in expenses this year. Can you share just at a high level what the total revenue and total expenses were again, or what the delta?
Yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable giving you that number. Quite honestly, we have a lot of things that are pushing in. We still have expenses coming out. We still have revenue coming in, and I don't have a solid number. We had a board meeting yesterday, and we didn't present financials at it.
Okay.
We approved the budget moving forward, but we haven't approved the financials for last year. That will come at a later date. I would be able to provide that to you when they're available, and as soon as they're available through the city as well. But
I think that'd be great, because I think that's the starting point for us, right? What's the delta? What's the problem we're trying to solve when it comes to the revenue side of things?
It's not in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
It's in the tens of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
And in terms of our balance sheet, we're cash positive. We don't have a cash flow problem at all, right? We have bands booked for next year. We're decades ahead of where we've been. What we do have is a bit of a shortfall. Like any business, we're following our balance sheet. The balance sheet looks strong. It's going in the right direction, and we brought people in with financial expertise to kind of help us guide that.
Good.
And we see a balanced budget for next year.
Okay.
And then building into a reserve on years past. So if that helps.
That helps. That helps. Okay. Give some context anyway for us and people watching as well. And then, do you know, and maybe you don't, and providing this information afterwards is fine as well, just how much fundraising sponsorship you received this year, ballpark?
It was in excess of 300,000, but it's again kind of a little convoluted, and we could provide you a clearer number down the line. So
okay.
Yeah, I apologize for not being more clear on that.
Nope, that's fine. Follow-up's fine. I'm putting you on the spot. And just for city staff, can you remind us again how much city provided total funding, which would include like staff support, but what that total financial realm would be? Is it 37?
To you, Chair Hamilton, in 2025, it was $25,000.
$25,000.
It was 10,000 side stage and 15,000 transit.
Okay.
However, we didn't use 10,000 for the side stage. We only used the transit. But
portion.
The direct support is a different number, right?
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to move us ahead here, and we did change the agenda, so we're moving into one of our reports, 7.1, which is the Kempenfest consultation. Do I need to read all of the items here? I do not. Do I need to put it on the floor? It's just to be received. Someone puts it on the floor. Could someone please put it on the floor? Councillor Riepma, thank you. And all those in favor? All those opposed? And it passes. Thank you. Okay, moving us into our third presentation then. This is 3.2, presentation by Tourism Barrie concerning the methodology for measuring the economic impact of festival and events. This was your question after. I would like to call Kathleen Traynor, Executive Director of Tourism Barrie, to the podium to deliver the presentation. And you're already there, great. Go.
Thank you. I do have a presentation of just 5 little slides. It's not up, but that's fine. So thank you very much for inviting me. Tourism Barrie was requested to review the methodology for measuring the visitation numbers and how we arrive at the economic impact for the Barrie Festival and events. Our economic impact came for Kempenfest in particular, came to 8.4 million, and Kempenfest is at 9.5, so we differ by $1 million. So there are many different tools and methodologies available to measure event attendance, economic impact, and visitor spending to ensure accuracy, consistency, and industry standard reporting. Tourism Barrie utilizes 3 key platforms. We use Environics Analytics, which is the MobileScape technology. We use Destination International's Event Impact Calculator, and we use CoStar, the STAR reports on hotel industry. Tourism Barrie has been utilizing Environics Analytics MobileScape data since 2024. In early 2025, Environics Analytics completed a significant platform upgrade, enhancing accuracy and data technology as data technology continues to evolve. Tourism Barrie remains confident that the MobileScape is the most reliable and advanced tool available in Canada for measuring events, attendance, visitor demographics, and audience segmentation. If you do not wish to have your data collected, turn off your Bluetooth on your cell phone. Once Environics Analytics provides Tourism Barrie with a comprehensive attendance breakdown, identifying residents versus visitors and the distance they traveled, the data is entered into Destination International's Event Impact Calculator. This platform was developed by Tourism Economics. It is a division of Oxford Economics. So for over 15 years, they developed the platform 15 years ago and has been continuously refined. This economic calculator is an industry standard model used by over 380 destination marketing organizations globally. The calculator is a sophisticated matrix that integrates data from a wide range of government data sources. Backed by decades of expertise and a team of specialized tourism economics has an established platform as a global leader in tourism economic impact analysis. For the past 10 years, Tourism Barrie has relied on STAR reports to monitor Barrie's hotel sector. These reports provide detailed daily, weekly, and monthly insights into hotel occupancy, average daily room rates, and year-to-year performance compared against 5 competitive cities. This hotel platform data is then entered into Destination International's Event Calculator to enhance accuracy of the economic impact analysis. By integrating data from all 3 platforms, Tourism Barrie produces a comprehensive report that qualifies the total economic impact for each festival and event, including the number of jobs, household income generated, and the tax revenue returned to the community. And that report is available to the City of Barrie. We gave it to Kempenfest, and we have provided it to staff when requested. And that's it. Any questions? I would also like to add, sorry that's so loud, overnight stays in Barrie. We just finished our Q3 reporting, presented to council tomorrow. I'll send it to you. We finished our Q3 reporting, and overnight stays in Barrie are up 21% over Q3 in 2024. And from June to September, people that came to Centennial Beach to the South Shore Centre between June 1 and September 5 compared 2024 to 25, that was up 7.3%. And Mr. Markle is correct. We have seen a trend. We've seen a trend that people are staying in Airbnbs and visiting friends and family. That's due to the economy. So we have seen a decline in the hotel occupancy, but we've seen a 20% increase in Airbnb. So that is correct. More people staying with visiting friends and families in Airbnbs than in hotels. And we have the daily reports on during Kempenfest, and the occupancy was 72%. So no, the hotels are not sold out. There are a lot more rooms to be sold during the Kempenfest weekend, and I can provide you with those daily occupancies, room rates, and ADRs, if you like them.
Thank you. I'll turn to committee members first. And again, I'll just ask you can keep your questions to very brief. Members of committee, any questions or comments? Seeing none. Members of the council, any questions or comments? Seeing none. That was very brief. Well, thank you, Kathleen, to you and Tourism Barrie.
I just comment that they use the TREAM report, which is the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sports from Ontario, which differs from Destination Internationals, which is a tourism and exclusively a festival event platform, where the TREAM report that they use is for any from sports to festival events to any other event happening in the tourism sector. So that's why they vary.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.